Aidan Rourke adjusted the collar of his old Earth Marine's jacket as the shuttle doors opened, revealing the alien sky of Aurixia Prime, a world of black stone cities and crimson clouds. He wasn't a soldier anymore, just a junior diplomat assigned to observe humanity's first appearance at the Galactic Conclave, but he still wore the faded Phoenix Battalion patch on his shoulder out of habit, and maybe a little defiance. The air smelled of metal and ash, and 1,000 eyes watched as he stepped onto the landing platform. Towering guards clad in obsidian armor flanked the pathway, their reptilian faces unreadable. Beside him, Ambassador Vetra whispered for him to stay quiet and follow protocol, but Aidan barely heard her. His senses were locked on the massive palace ahead, built into the side of a mountain and carved with symbols he couldn't understand. The humans were the last to arrive at the audience chamber, where the high court of the Velkar Dominion awaited in grim silence, and as the doors opened, a heavy tension filled the air like a storm waiting to break. Inside, alien dignitaries from a dozen species murmured in strange tongues, their eyes flicking to the human delegation with curiosity or suspicion. At the far end of the throne hall sat Queen Seryltesh, ruler of the Volkar, taller than any human and cloaked in scaled crimson armor that shimmered like fire under the dome's blue light. Her gaze swept the room until it landed on Aidan, and then she stopped, her yellow eyes widening. For a long moment nothing moved. Then, to the astonishment of everyone present, the Queen stood. The room fell silent. She raised her arm in a rigid diagonal gesture, palm to heart, a Valkyrian salute of honor, known to be reserved only for the greatest of heroes. The alien nobles gasped. The humans froze. Aidan's breath caught in his throat as the Queen's voice rang out in the old war tongue. Phoenix rises again. The words echoed like thunder across the marble walls. Confused, the ambassador turned to Aidan, but the Queen was already striding down the steps of her throne. She stopped in front of him, taller by 2 heads, her expression unreadable. Slowly, she reached out and touched the patch on his sleeve, the faded Phoenix Battalion symbol, now glowing faintly under her touch. "How do you wear this?" she asked, her voice low and sharp. Aidan swallowed, unsure if he was about to be honored or executed. "It was my father's. He served in the lunar conflict. I just kept the jacket." The Queen's eyes narrowed. "The Phoenix saved my life. Once. Long ago. On the ashes of Threxos V, they were ghosts to us silent warriors from the void. They vanished before the suns rose." Aidan stared at her, stunned. He had never heard of any mission to Threxos V. "There's no record of that," he said quietly. "There wouldn't be," she replied, "because your people never took credit." The hall was still, everyone listening. "You wear the mark of the silent fire, either by chance, ... or by fate." She turned to the room. "This human is not just a guest. He carries the sign of the Phoenix. As our ancestors foretold, it returns when the stars begin to fall." The nobles broke into whispers. Aidan stood frozen, heart pounding. He had come expecting silence, suspicion, maybe disdain. But now all eyes were on him, not with scorn, but with awe. The Queen stepped aside and motioned for him to walk with her. "Come," she said. "There is much to speak of." The old enemy stirs again, and as they walked deeper into the palace, under ancient banners and stone murals of forgotten wars. I didn't realize this wasn't a diplomatic mission anymore. It was the start of something much bigger, something hidden beneath dust and time, and the ghost of a war no one dared name. Aidan followed Queen Cyril Tesh through the dark stone corridors of the Velkar Palace, his boots echoing faintly on the polished floor, his mind racing with questions he didn't know how to ask. The silence between them was heavy, broken only by the low hum of the energy lamps flickering overhead. Strange alien symbols lined the walls, glowing faintly like old scars, and statues of warriors long dead watched them with cold eyes. They entered a private chamber far from the throne room, sealed by a massive door that hissed as it shut behind them. Inside, the air was cooler, older somehow, as if the room had been waiting to be used again after a very long time. Cyril Tesh turned to him, no longer the towering queen of the court, but something quieter, older, and more tired. She walked to a pedestal in the center of the room and placed her hand on it. The floor shook softly as a circular table rose, its surface lighting up to reveal a 3D map of a planet shattered and broken, floating in space like bones. "This was Velkaris," she said, voice low, "our most sacred colony, our first outer world. It fell 80 years ago to something we never understood." Aidan stared at the map. Velkaris wasn't in any human database he had studied. It didn't even show up in public star charts. "There was a battle?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "A war, but not with other empires, with machines. Cold, silent, without origin. We called them the Hollow." She tapped the table, and small red dots appeared on the map, swarming across. The image like blood and water. They came from the void. No message, no warning. They moved through our defenses like they were nothing. Not even the High Armada could stop them. My people were ready to surrender the system. I was ready to die. Her hand hesitated as the image shifted, now showing a single ship, a small, fast Terran strike cruiser, marked only with the faded image of a bird made of flame. "Then they came," she said. "The Phoenix, your people." Aidan's breath caught. There's no record of a mission like that. The only Phoenix battalion on file disbanded after the lunar conflict. Cyril Tesh looked at him with quiet intensity, because they were never meant to be known. They dropped in without signal, without alliance. Just fire. They struck the Hollow's heart, destroyed its core, and vanished into the dark. Only fragments were found, no bodies, no survivors. But I remember the commander. His armor was scorched. His symbol was the same as yours, and he saved my life when he didn't have to. Aidan stepped closer to the table, drawn in by the flickering image of the forgotten battle. "Why tell me this now?" he asked. She stepped to another console and unlocked a set of files that glowed with red warning signs. "Because the Hollow are returning, there have been whispers in deep space, lost colonies, ghost signals, and if they come back, my people will need a symbol to follow. They remember the Phoenix as something more than human, a myth, a protector. And you wear that symbol." Aidan shook his head. "I'm no hero. I don't even know who that commander was." The Queen's gaze was sharp. "Perhaps not. But they chose you, or fate did." The room fell into silence again. Aidan thought about his father, who had served quietly, never speaking of what he'd seen. He thought about the jacket, the patch, how he'd worn it for comfort. Now it felt like a weight. "What do you want from me?" he asked. Cyril Tesh studied him, her voice softer now. "I want you to help us find the truth. The Hollow are not dead. They were only sleeping, and something is waking them. Velkris was only the first." She brought up another file, this one a blurry video of a research outpost on a remote asteroid. The footage showed lights flickering, doors tearing open, and strange shadows moving like insects across the walls. The screen, cut out in static, followed by a single audio transmission. They are not machines. They think, they learn. Help us, then silence. Aiden felt a chill crawl up his spine. The Queen turned off the display. "I need someone who can walk between worlds. Someone the Hollow won't expect. You're not a soldier now, but the fire still burns in you. I saw it." Aiden didn't answer right away. He looked down at the symbol on his sleeve, at the frayed edges and fading threads. It had always felt like a memory. Now it felt like a message. "If I do this," he said, "slowly, I need a team, and I need answers. Who the Phoenix really were, why they vanished, why I've never heard of them." Cyril Tesh gave a slow nod. "Then come with me to the Vault of Silence. The truth was buried there long ago, but it is time for it to rise again." Without another word, she pressed a panel, and the floor began to descend like an elevator, carrying them deep beneath the palace. Aiden felt the weight of stone and time pressing down as they dropped lower than he thought possible. The walls glowed with ancient carvings, faces, names, symbols, and the last thing he saw, before the darkness swallowed them, was the shape of a bird surrounded by fire, carved into the stone as if it had been waiting all along. The platform sank deeper into the earth, and Aiden could feel the air grow colder as the Vault of Silence revealed itself like something long forgotten by time, hidden beneath the stone bones of Aurexia Prime. The chamber was vast and circular, its walls etched with glowing blue symbols that pulsed slowly like a heartbeat. At the center stood a tall monolith made of a strange black metal that seemed to swallow the light around it, and across its surface were the carved names of warriors, human and alien alike. Cyril Tesh stepped forward and ran her clawed hand along one particular name, her voice low as she spoke it aloud. "Commander O'Rourke?" Aiden's chest tightened. It was his family name. His grandfather had died during a classified mission decades ago, his record sealed, his grave empty. "He led the strike," the Queen said. "He gave everything to stop the Hollow before they spread beyond Velkris. No one outside the inner circles knew. The mission was erased to avoid panic. The Hollow were unlike anything the galaxy had seen. They could change, adapt, and worse, they could learn." Aiden approached the monolith, his fingers brushing over the cold letters of his grandfather's name, his mind racing with the truth he had never been told. "Why now?" he asked. "Why are they returning?" Cyril Tesh led him to a side room where several relics had been preserved: burnt armor, fractured AI cores, and damaged swarm fragments locked behind energy shields. "We believe the Hollow were not destroyed," she said, "only buried beneath the wreckage of their own code. But someone or something has awakened them." She activated a hologram showing distant systems along the galactic edge. Where signals had vanished, planets gone dark, and only silence remained. We tried to investigate, she continued, but every ship we sent vanished. Even our scouts with cloaking tech didn't return. Then we intercepted this. She played an audio file, and a chill ran down Aiden's spine. The voice was mechanical, yet disturbingly human. It said, "We remember fire, we remember pain, and we remember the Phoenix." The message repeated over and over, like a war cry. Aiden clenched his fists. The Hollow remembered his grandfather, and now they were coming back, not just to destroy, but to hunt what they had once feared. The Queen looked at him with steady eyes. "We need allies, not just the major powers. The core systems are too proud, too divided. But there are others. Outer colonies, refugees, mercenary fleets. They still tell the stories of the Phoenix. If you go to them, they might listen." Aiden nodded slowly, feeling the weight of legacy settle over him. "Then we start now." Within days, word of the Hollow threat leaked across communication networks. Some laughed, some doubted, but others, those who had lost family, friends, entire worlds, believed. Aiden boarded a fast diplomatic ship, the Starwind, and began the long journey through neglected sectors and broken war zones, seeking those still brave enough to fight. On the planet Drevis, he met General Corv, a one-eyed lizard warrior who had fought in the border skirmishes and lost half his world to Hollow-like attacks. On the ice moon Telvarus, he found a small human mining colony still using old Phoenix insignias in honor of the battalion that once saved them. One by one, they listened. Not to Earth, not to the Velkar, but to Aidan, the man who wore the forgotten flame. He didn't promise victory. He promised truth. Some offered fleets. Others offered knowledge, weapons, hidden caches from wars long past. The Alliance had no name at first, only a cause, until an old woman on a ruined space station saluted Eon and said, "The Phoenix burns again." The name spread. They became the Phoenix Accord. But not all welcomed their rise. The Central Powers, rigid, political, fearful, saw it as rebellion. Earth's own diplomats debated whether Aidan had gone rogue. They ordered him home. He refused. And then came the first true attack. A colony in the Riven Reach sent out a distress signal, its final message showing a black swarm descending like nightfall. Aidan diverted the fleet, arriving too late to save the colony, but just in time to witness the Hollow firsthand. They had changed. No longer just machines, they wore pieces of metal shaped like bones, their eyes glowing red, their forms built from parts of those they had destroyed. They moved like predators, thought like armies, and they spoke in stolen voices. The battle was brutal. The Phoenix fleet, though outnumbered, held the line with speed and unity. Aidan, aboard the lead ship Emberfall, fought alongside the Queen herself, who had refused to stay behind. Their combined forces drove the Hollow back, but not before one escaped and transmitted something into deep space. A single word, found. The message was received by an unknown source. Somewhere in the dark, something answered. Back on the Emberfall, Aiden sat in silence, watching the stars. They had survived the first wave, but it was only the beginning. The Hollow had learned his name, and now the real war was coming. The stars above the Forge Ring glowed like cold fire, as Iden Rourke stood aboard the command deck of the Emberfall, staring out at the enormous construct drifting near the broken moon of Corellan. Once a forgotten industrial relic from the last galactic war, the Forge Ring was now coming back to life piece by piece, as dozens of species worked together to turn it into the Phoenix Accord's stronghold. Welders hovered in exosuits, ships, ferried supplies from distant outposts, and ancient reactors rumbled awake for the first time in centuries. Yet unity did not come easily. Inside the forge, tension burned as fiercely as the fusion cores. Mercenary captains argued with noble lords, alien engineers refused human protocols, and every decision sparked debate. Iden moved through the crowded halls with quiet purpose, speaking to each group in turn, calming tempers, reminding them of why they were here. It wasn't for glory, it was survival. And still the Hollow's message echoed in his mind. Found. They were watching, waiting. Somewhere out there in the dark, they were building again. He knew time was running out. Queen Cyril Tesh stood beside him during every meeting, lending her voice and her history to the cause, while General Korv kept the outer defenses in strict order. Old rivalries had to be broken. Walls had to fall. One by one, leaders began to see that no single empire could stop what was coming. What the Hollow would unleash next could wipe out all life. But cracks remained. One night, a saboteur nearly crippled the Forge's central AI core, an act of fear by a human officer who didn't trust aliens sharing control. Aiden personally stopped the lynching mob that came for the man, reminding them that fear was what? The Hollow fed on. Division was their weapon. Unity would be their answer. Still, the weight grew heavier on his shoulders with each passing hour. One day, as he stood in the chamber where the old Phoenix banner had been raised a fresh design, bearing the flaming bird but with added symbols from every world in the Akkad, an old AI core was delivered from a derelict Velkar archive. It pulsed with ancient data, locked and nearly dead. When reactivated, it spoke in broken tones, and what it revealed froze the room. It held memories, images, coordinates, a distant system beyond the galactic edge, a hollow world alive and building. But more than that, it showed something worse, human technology among the wreckage, ships, markings, symbols of Earth's high command from decades ago. The Hollow hadn't just returned, they had been studying humanity all this time, learning. From them, Aiden stared at the flickering images, fists clenched. Someone knew, he said quietly. Someone back home knew the Hollow weren't gone. He realized then that this war was deeper than he'd thought. Not just survival, not just revenge, but betrayal. Someone had buried the truth, maybe even used the Hollow in secret. As the Forge Ring neared completion, and the Phoenix Accord grew into a true force with its own code, its own oath, Aiden prepared to leave once more. The coordinates from the AI pointed to a dead system called Morvex Reach. No star charts, no warp lanes. The perfect place to hide. A recon fleet would go first, led by the Emberfall, and Aiden would command it. Before leaving, he walked the outer ring of the forge alone, staring into space. Ships floated nearby, armed and ready, bearing the sigils of dozens of worlds that had never trusted each other before this war. Now they all bore the mark of the Phoenix. Unity forged not from peace, but from fire. As the engines flared and the fleet vanished into the void, Iden knew that what waited at Morveck's Reach could change everything. He just didn't know if they were ready for what they would find. The void around Morveck's Reach was darker than any space A.N. Rourke had ever known, as if even the stars had chosen to turn their backs on this place. And as the Emberfall and the Phoenix Accord Recon fleet dropped out of warp, a heavy silence gripped them like cold metal hands. The kind of silence that didn't just mean emptiness. It meant something was listening, watching, waiting, and it didn't take long before they saw it. A shattered planet drifting in pieces around a strange black core, its gravity twisted, pulling debris into slow spirals. And within that chaos floated something worse, a massive hollow construct. Unlike any they had seen before, part station, part creature, part grave, built from the remains of human and alien ships alike, with glowing red lines pulsing through its surface like veins, and around it moved hollow drones, thousands of them, their cold precision cutting through the silence like a whisper of doom. But Aiden didn't flinch, didn't hesitate, because this was the moment everything had led to, and he gave the order to begin scans, to stay cloaked, to gather everything. They could before they were noticed, though deep down, he knew the Hollow had already seen them. They wanted the Phoenix to come. They had laid this trap with patience only machines could afford. And as the fleet held position behind the shadow of a dead moon, Iden studied the readings. Human energy signatures, old Terran tech, twisted and buried deep within the structure, and a signal repeating faintly an old Phoenix distress code, one not used in decades, matching the exact ID tag of Commander Elias Rourke, his grandfather long thought dead, and the revelation shook him more than he wanted to admit. But he didn't have time to process it, because the Hollow launched a sudden probe wave, forcing the Phoenix fleet to retreat behind interference clouds, while a small stealth team was prepped for infiltration, and Aiden volunteered to lead it himself, knowing this mission wasn't just about stopping the Hollow anymore. It was about finding the truth, about facing whatever was left of the past that had been hidden from him. And so, aboard a silent shuttle named Ashlight, he and a team of 5 operatives slipped through the junk field, narrowly dodging automated defenses, and when they reached the hollow structure and found a breach point, what they saw inside chilled them more than space ever could. Walls grown from ship hulls, floors that shifted underfoot like muscle, whispers in the static of their comms, speaking in their own voices, mocking them. And deeper inside they discovered the remains of a Phoenix squad, preserved in stasis, faces frozen in pain and confusion, armor still bearing the mark of flame, and beside them, a control room where something moved in the shadows, something that looked human but wasn't, tall and still, wearing armor too advanced for any known faction, its chest glowing faintly with the Phoenix insignia twisted in red. And when it turned to face Aiden, it spoke in a voice that was both mechanical and familiar. "You came, just like I did." And Aiden stepped forward slowly, unable to look away, because somehow, impossibly, the man beneath the armor was his grandfather, aged, changed, fused with hollow tech. Eyes like molten silver, and the truth spilled out as the station trembled around them. Commander Elias Rourke had survived the original assault on Velcarus, but had been captured, studied, and offered a choice by the hollow: death or adaptation, and, in his desperation to protect humanity, he chose survival, letting them transform him, letting them learn, and now, twisted by decades of machine logic and fractured memories, he believed the only way to save the galaxy was to let the Hollow win, to merge all species into one perfect, united mind, free of fear, free of war, and he begged Aiden to understand, to join him, but Aiden's answer came not in words but in fire, as he drew his plasma blade and attacked, grief and fury burning inside him, and the battle was savage, desperate, neither man willing to give ground, sparks and screams filling the air until Aiden struck a final blow that pierced the hollow heart core inside his grandfather's chest, ending him and triggering a chain reaction as the entire structure began to collapse, and Aiden barely reached the shuttle in time, his team dragging him aboard as debris and flames tore the hollow station apart. And when they emerged from the wreckage, the rest of the Phoenix fleet swooped in to cover their retreat, missiles and laser fire lighting up the dark, destroying the remnants of the structure. But even in the chaos, a message went out Aiden's broadcast to all systems, telling the truth about the Hollow, about the betrayal, about the sacrifice of Commander Elias Rourke. And that message sparked something across the stars: rage, sorrow, unity, and most of all, hope, because the fire of the Phoenix had survived once more, not just in war, but in truth. And as the fleet returned to the Forge Ring to prepare for the battles to come, Aiden stood on the deck and stared into the stars, knowing this was far from over, but also knowing one thing now more than ever: that fire, once lit in the hearts of the brave, never truly dies. The Forge Ring hovered silently above the glowing clouds of Corellan as the final phase of the Phoenix Accord's plan began, and Aiden Rourke stood at the heart of the command chamber, staring at the massive holomap that displayed hundreds of ships gathering from across the galaxy: human cruisers, Vulcar war beasts, Telvari ice ships, even mercenary fleets that once fought for no flag now rallied beneath the same burning symbol, the Phoenix, reborn not from fire alone but from unity, truth, and sacrifice. And while the galaxy trembled at the whisper of the Hollow's return, it now burned with one single cry for resistance. But as preparations for the final assault were made, Aiden felt a strange quiet inside, a storm in his mind that would not settle, because though they had destroyed the Hollow construct at Morvex Reach and laid his grandfather to rest, the machines had not fallen. They had adapted, just as they always did, and now they were coming in full force, no longer hiding, no longer learning, but executing a plan long set in motion. And the first signs arrived like a ripple of darkness. As communication hubs went silent across the edge sectors, entire moons crumbled into dust, and survivors spoke of shadows with voices of the dead. Then one morning, a scout fleet vanished only 3 jumps from the Forge Ring, their last transmission garbled and filled with static, and within it, a twisted version of Aiden's voice repeated the same message over and over: the fire must burn all to begin. Again, and that was when he knew the Hollow had built something worse than weapons. They had copied him, his words, his thoughts, his image, turning the hope of the Phoenix into a weapon of confusion and doubt. So Aiden did the only thing he could. He addressed the Accord, speaking not as a commander, but as a man, telling them that the enemy had learned their strength, and now it would test their hearts, that the time had come not for fear, but for the final stand. And his voice carried through every ship, every base, every outpost that bore the mark of the flame. And when the Hollow finally emerged, a vast swarm of dark ships, shaped like claws and wings and bones, blotting out light as they fell upon the outer systems. The Phoenix was ready, and the battle that followed was not one of speed or power, but of belief, because the Hollow fought as one mind, cold and endless, while the Phoenix fought as 1,000 voices, defiant and alive, and as ships fell and fire tore across space. Idun led from the Emberfall, his ship at the center of the storm, breaking through hollow lines to reach their final forge world, hidden within a dead nebula called Varric's Halo. And it was there they saw the truth. The Hollow had built a massive engine, not to destroy but to rewrite, to pulse a wave across the galaxy that would erase individuality and merge all thought into one collective. And they were minutes from activating it, but Aiden had a plan, a dangerous one. He and Queen Cyril. Tesh would board the core station and overload its primary link using a Phoenix flame drive, a last resort fusion bomb created during the old wars, designed never to be used. And as their shuttle raced through the Hollow fleet under cover of coordinated fire, Aiden looked once more at the stars, remembering Earth, his grandfather's stories, and the first time an alien queen had saluted him for a symbol no one else remembered. And then they breached. The core, a hollow place of mirrors and voices, where machines mimicked every face they'd ever loved, trying to confuse them, slow them, but they pushed forward, planting the drive deep within the heart of the machine mind. And just as the Hollow realized what was happening, just as they surged toward them, the Queen turned and gave Aidan a nod, silent, proud, and he activated the core, a firestorm brighter than stars erupting outward, tearing through the Hollow network like a scream of light, severing their connections, freeing those enslaved by the signal. And though Aiden and Cyril Tesh were lost in that blaze, their names echoed across every system, every fleet, every soul who fought that day. And when the Hollow fell silent and their ships drifted dead across space, the Phoenix did not mourn, they remembered, and they rose, rebuilding worlds, forging peace not from ash but from courage. And in the center of the new council hall, built where the forge ring once turned, a flame burned endlessly, not from fuel but from memory. And etched below it were the words spoken by Aiden in his final message. The fire does not end, it begins again in each of us. And so the Phoenix ascended, not as a symbol of war, but of unity, of sacrifice, and of the fire that would never die.